I gave birth on a Tuesday morning. They placed him on my chest, still wet and screaming, and I felt my entire world reorganize itself around this tiny person. The nurses said something kind. Someone took photos. I wasn't really paying attention. I was looking at his face, his perfect face, counting his fingers, watching him breathe. My husband wasn't there. He'd gone home the night before to sleep. Said he'd come back in the morning. He didn't make it in time. I labored for 6 hours and pushed for 2, and when it was over and they handed me my son, I was alone. He arrived 3 hours later with coffee and apologies. Said traffic was bad. Said his alarm didn't go off. Said he'd been so tired. He held the baby for maybe 10 minutes, took a few pictures, then sat in the chair scrolling his phone while I tried to figure out how to breastfeed. 3 days later, the nurse told me we'd be discharged Friday at 4 in the afternoon. I called him that evening after visiting hours, told him the time, told him to be there, to bring the car seat, to help me with the bags, to actually be present for once. There was a pause, one of those pauses that makes your stomach drop before your brain catches up. He said he wasn't sure he could make it. I asked what he meant. He said his mother had fallen, 2 days ago apparently, broke her leg, fractured it in 2 places. She'd called him that night, told him she needed help, couldn't walk, couldn't manage the stairs, couldn't do anything alone. I lay there in the narrow hospital bed with my son sleeping in the plastic bassinet beside me and tried to process what I was hearing. He said he'd been staying at her place since it happened, sleeping on her couch, helping her to the bathroom, making her meals, getting her medication. He said it like it was the most natural thing in the world, like there was no other possible arrangement. I asked about us, about our son, about bringing us home. He said I was in the hospital, said I had nurses, had doctors, had people checking on me every few hours, said his mother had no one, kept saying that. She has no one. Like I had some kind of support system he couldn't see, like I hadn't just given birth to his child. I told him I needed him. He said his mother needed him more. Let that sink in for a second. His mother needed him more. I could hear her in the background, her voice floating through the phone, muffled but distinct. She was saying something. He covered the receiver. When he came back, his tone had shifted, gotten defensive in that specific way that meant she'd given him instructions. He said his mother thought I should just take a taxi home or call my parents. She didn't understand why this had to be such a big deal. Young women took taxis from hospitals all the time. I was perfectly capable. I had 2 working legs. His mother only had 1 right now. Surely I could see the difference. I stared at the ceiling tiles and felt something inside me crystallize into a hard, cold certainty. He kept talking, said it was temporary, just until she could manage on her own. A week maybe, 2 at most. He said I wasn't being fair, wasn't considering how difficult this was for him. He actually used those words, difficult for him, like he was the one who'd just had a human being extracted from his body. Then she must have taken the phone, because suddenly it was her voice in my ear, sweet, concerned, dripping with false sympathy. She said congratulations, said she was so happy about the baby, said she couldn't wait to meet him when things settled down. She said she understood I must be tired, must be emotional, hormones and all that, but surely I could see that she was in real pain, physical pain, not just the normal tiredness that came with having a baby. She'd broken her leg, actually broken it. That was serious. She said when she'd had her son, she'd managed everything alone. Her husband had been working. She'd taken a taxi home from the hospital, carried the baby and the bags herself, figured it out because that's what mothers did. They figured it out. She said I seemed like a capable young woman, smart, independent. She was sure I'd manage just fine. She said family was about sacrifice, about understanding, about not making things harder than they needed to be. She said she hoped I wasn't the kind of person who'd make her son choose between his wife and his mother. That would be cruel, unfair, manipulative even. She said all of this in the gentlest possible voice, like she was giving me advice, like she was on my side. When he got back on the line, he sounded relieved, like his mother had handled the difficult conversation for him. He said we'd figure everything out, said he'd come visit as soon as he could, said I should rest, said he loved me, said he'd call tomorrow. I hung up without responding. I sat there in the dim hospital room with my sleeping son and felt myself go very calm, very clear, the kind of clarity that comes when you finally stop lying to yourself. I called my father, told him we were being discharged Friday at 4, asked if he could pick us up. He said of course, asked if everything was all right. I said yes. He didn't believe me. I could hear it in his voice, but he didn't push, just said he'd be there, him and my mother both. They arrived at 3:30, early, like they always were. My mother cried when she held her grandson, cried and laughed and kept saying how perfect he was. My father loaded our bags into the car with careful precision, made sure the car seat was installed correctly, double-checked every strap. A nurse came with a wheelchair, hospital policy. Had to wheel me out even though I could walk. My mother carried the baby. My father carried everything else. The nurse smiled and waved and told me congratulations and good luck. In the parking lot, my father asked where to. I gave him my parents' address. My mother turned around in her seat, looked at me, really looked at me. I looked back. She understood. I watched her understand. Watched her face do that thing where she wanted to ask but knew better. She just nodded, reached back and squeezed my hand. We drove to their house in silence. They set me up in my old bedroom. My mother had already prepared it. Borrowed bassinet next to the bed, fresh sheets, diapers and wipes stacked on the dresser. She'd known somehow, or maybe she'd just hoped. My father brought my bags up, lined them against the wall, asked if I needed anything. I shook my head. He kissed my forehead and left me alone. I lay down on my childhood bed with my son beside me and felt nothing but relief. My husband called the next morning. I let it ring. He called again an hour later, and again that afternoon. I watched my phone light up and vibrate and ignored it. He left voicemails. I deleted them without listening. He sent texts, long paragraphs explaining, justifying, asking me to understand, asking me to call him back, asking where I was. I blocked his number after 3 days. He started calling my parents' landline. My father answered once, told him I didn't want to talk. My husband said he had a right to know where his wife and son were. My father said I was safe, and that was all he needed to know. My husband said this was kidnapping. My father laughed, actually laughed, then hung up. After a week, he showed up at the house. I was upstairs feeding the baby when I heard the doorbell. Heard my father's voice, then his, rising, getting agitated. My father stayed calm, told him to leave. He refused, said he wasn't going anywhere until he saw me, until we talked, until I stopped being crazy. My father told him he had 10 seconds to get off the property. He said, or what? My father didn't answer, just stood there. 5 seconds passed, then 10. Then my husband left. I watched from the window, watched him get in his car, sit there for a minute, then drive away. I called a lawyer the next day. She was efficient, professional, asked all the right questions. How long we'd been married, whether we owned property together, whether there was any history of abuse, whether I wanted to pursue counseling or mediation first. I said no to all of it. She said she'd file for divorce, for full custody, for child support, said he'd be served within the week, asked if I was prepared for the reality of single parenthood. I looked at my son, 2 weeks old, asleep in my arms, perfect and helpless, and entirely dependent on me. I said I was already a single parent. She nodded like she'd heard it before. The papers were served at his mother's house, where he was still staying apparently, still taking care of her, still sleeping on her couch. He called from a different number. I didn't recognize it, so I answered. He was crying, actually crying. Said he didn't understand, said I was destroying our family, said we could fix this if I'd just talk to him, just come home. Just stop being so stubborn. I asked if he was still at his mother's. He said yes, but that wasn't the point. I said it was exactly the point. He said she needed him. Said she couldn't manage alone. Said I was being selfish. Said I had my parents helping me, so why couldn't he help his mother? I said my parents were helping me with our son. He was helping his mother instead of his son. He said that wasn't fair. I hung up. He tried calling back. I blocked that number too. His mother called a few days later. I don't know how she got my number. I answered before I could think better of it. She said she'd heard about the divorce papers. Said she was shocked. Said she never imagined I'd do something so drastic. Said she'd always thought I was more mature than this. She said her son was devastated. Absolutely devastated. He'd made one little mistake and I was throwing away the entire marriage. She said that wasn't how family worked. Family forgave. Family understood. Family stuck together. She said she knew I was probably still emotional from giving birth. Hormones made women irrational, made them do things they'd regret later. She was sure in a few months I'd realize I'd overreacted. I'd feel terrible about it. She said she bore no ill will. She understood I was going through a difficult time, but she hoped I'd think about my son, about what was best for him. A boy needed his father, needed a stable two-parent home. Surely I didn't want to raise him alone. Surely I could see how selfish that was. I asked if she was done. She laughed, said she was just trying to help, trying to be the voice of reason since clearly no one else was. I told her she'd gotten exactly what she wanted. Her son was with her, living with her, taking care of her. She'd won. She went quiet for a moment, then her voice changed, got colder, sharper. She said she didn't know what I was implying, said she'd never wanted the marriage to end, but if I was determined to throw it away, that was my choice, my mistake. She'd support her son through it, be there for him like she'd always been. She said someday I'd understand what it meant to be a mother, what it meant to protect your child. She said when my son was grown and had his own family, I'd do the same thing. I'd put him first, above everyone else, the way she did. I told her she was right. I would put my son first. I already was. That's why I was leaving. Then I hung up on her too. The divorce took 5 months to finalize. He didn't fight it, didn't contest anything, signed whatever his lawyer put in front of him, agreed to every term, accepted supervised visitation every other weekend, agreed to child support, did all of it with what his lawyer described as resigned compliance. We met once, at the lawyer's office for the final signing. I brought my parents. He came alone. He looked terrible, thinner, pale, dark circles under his eyes like he wasn't sleeping. He tried to catch my eye, tried to start a conversation. His lawyer stopped him, reminded him this was just a formality. We signed. The lawyer notarized everything, said congratulations like we'd accomplished something. We left through different doors. He has his visitation now, every other Saturday from 10 to 4. He picks up our son from my parents' house, never comes inside. My father brings the baby out, hands him over on the porch. He takes our son, spends 6 hours with him, brings him back, never tries to talk to me. I asked my father once what they talk about on the porch during the handoff. My father said they don't talk. He just takes the baby, says thank you, leaves. After the 3rd or 4th visit, his mother called again. I'd forgotten to block this number, picked up by accident. She said she'd heard he was seeing the baby regularly, said that was good, said she was glad I was being reasonable about it at least, said she hoped eventually we could all move past this unpleasantness, maybe even be friends. She said she'd been thinking about what I'd said, about her winning. She said that wasn't fair. She'd never wanted the marriage to end, never wanted a broken family. But if I was going to point fingers, she supposed she couldn't stop me. She said she'd done what any mother would do, protected her child, made sure he was taken care of when he needed her. That was what mothers did. That was love. She said someday my son would need me the same way. Someday he'd be grown, and maybe married, and maybe his wife wouldn't understand, wouldn't be supportive, and he'd need his mother, and I'd be there for him the way she'd been there for her son. She said I'd understand then. I'd see she'd been right all along. I asked if she was finished. She said she hoped I'd think about what she'd said. Really think about it. I told her I had thought about it. I'd thought about it every day for 5 months, and I'd realized she was absolutely right. Someday my son might need me, might call me in a crisis, might need help, and I'd be there. Of course I would. I'd drop everything. I'd help him. I'd support him. But if he was married, if he had a wife, if that wife had just given birth to his child and needed him, I'd tell him to go to her, to his family, to his wife and child. I'd tell him they came first, always, no matter what, because that's what a good mother does. She teaches her son to be a good man, a good husband, a good father. She doesn't teach him that he'll always be her little boy, that she'll always come first, that his wife will always be secondary. She doesn't compete with his wife, doesn't manipulate him, doesn't make him choose. She lets him go, lets him build his own family, lets him be the man she raised him to be. I told her she hadn't done that. She'd kept her son, trained him to prioritize her, taught him that his wife was negotiable, but his mother never was. I told her she'd raised him wrong, and now he was paying for it. We both were. I told her she'd won him, but she'd lost her grandson, lost any relationship she might have had with us, lost everything except her son. And someday, when she was gone, he'd be alone, because he never learned how to put anyone else first. I told her that was her legacy. That was her victory. Then I blocked her number. My son is 11 months old now. He's crawling, almost walking. He has 4 teeth. He laughs when I blow raspberries on his stomach. He sleeps through the night most of the time. He looks exactly like me. Everyone says so. His father sees him twice a month. Sometimes he cancels. Something always comes up. His mother needs him. She has an appointment. She's not feeling well. She's lonely. My father stopped giving him reasons, just texts me that the visit is canceled. I adjust my plans. We move on. People ask if I'm angry, if I hate him, if I regret leaving. I'm not angry. I don't hate him. I don't regret anything. I'm grateful. That phone call from the hospital, the one where he chose his mother over his newborn son, that was the greatest gift he ever gave me, because it showed me exactly who he was, who he'd always be, who he'd been raised to be. It showed me what my life would look like if I stayed. Years of coming in second, of understanding, of being reasonable, of taking taxis while he ran to his mother, of explaining to my son why Daddy wasn't there, why Grandma needed him more, why we had to wait. It showed me the pattern, the hierarchy, the reality, and it gave me the clarity to leave before I wasted any more time, before my son was old enough to remember, old enough to learn that this was normal, that this was how men treated their families. I left when he was 4 days old. 4 days. That's all it took to see everything I needed to see. Now he's almost a year old. He's growing up in a house where he's the priority, where the adults around him put him first, where he'll learn that when you have a family, you show up. You don't make excuses. You don't choose comfort over responsibility. He'll never remember his father missing his birth, missing his first days, choosing his grandmother over him. He'll grow up knowing his mother chose him every single time, without hesitation. That's enough. That's everything. People say I should be angrier, should fight for more child support, more visitation, should make him pay somehow. But I don't want him to pay. I don't want revenge. I don't want anything from him. I just want him to stay away. Because every time he cancels a visit, I feel relief. Every time I don't have to see him, I breathe easier. Every time I realize another week has passed without him, I'm grateful. He's not part of our life. He's an obligation we fulfill twice a month. A stranger who shares DNA with my son. Nothing more. And his mother. She hasn't met her grandson. Hasn't asked to. Hasn't called since I blocked her number. She got what she wanted. Her son back. living with her, taking care of her, choosing her. And I got what I wanted: freedom, clarity, peace. My son will grow up without a father in any meaningful sense. That's the truth. That's the price. But he'll grow up with a mother who never doubted him for a second, who never chose anyone else, who showed him what it meant to protect the people you love. That's the trade-off. And I'd make it again, every single time.